Testing. There we go. All right, there we go. We're good. All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our October 21st business meeting. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. And if you don't mind standing with us, we'll go ahead and do the Pledge of Allegiance. And Director Evanson, can you kick us off, please? All right, thank you, everyone. We go ahead and do roll call.
Mr. Chavez,
Present.
Mrs. Evanson.
Here.
Mrs. Heights,
Here.
Mr. Jones,
Here.
Ms. Lima.
Here. All right, do I have a motion to approve the meeting, or the agenda for this evening, excuse me?
Motion to approve the agenda?
Second.
Mr. Chavez,
Approved.
Mrs. Evanson,
Yes.
Mrs. Heights,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
All right, do I have a motion to approve the meeting minutes for September 2nd, 2025, September 5th, 2025, and September 16th, 2025?
Motion to approve the meeting minutes?
Second.
Mr. Chavez,
Approved.
Mrs. Evanson,
Yes.
Mrs. Heights,
Yes.
Mr. Jones,
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
All right, next up we have our recognitions. So just a reminder, if you can stay at the front so Callie can take pictures afterwards, that would be great. And Director Jones is going to kick off both of our recognitions for this evening.
All righty, good evening, everybody. Would Hunter Simons please join me in the front of the room? Or is it Simmons? Mr. Simmons. Across Colorado, countless high school athletes work hard at the top of their game. This year, Grand Junction High School senior Hunter Simmons did just that, earning the prestigious titles of the 2025 Class 4A Boys Golf State Champion and Southwest League Player of the Year. Hunter's path to the championship showed that years of hard work and determination can do. Over the tough days of competition, he shot a combined score of 139, finishing 1 under par and taking a top spot. He sealed his win with a clutch birdie on the final holes, showing incredible resilience under intense pressure. But Hunter's impact goes beyond his score. His teammates and coaches have all shared that his leadership, strong work ethic, and sportsmanship have made him a standout on the team and across the school. He is known for putting in work year-round and giving his best on the course, and showing respect for anyone he competes with qualities that represent the very best of Tiger Athletics. Tonight, the Board of Education and Superintendent Dr. Hill congratulate Hunter on his outstanding achievements. Thank you for proudly representing Grand Junction High School, District 51, and the Western Slope. We can't wait to see what you do next. With Fruita High School athletic trainer Jennifer Kimbrough, Dr. Irwin with Community Hospital, athletic trainers or athletic directors here tonight, please join me at the board at the front of the room. Tonight, we are proud to recognize all 4 of our comprehensive high schools, Central, Fruita Monument, Grand Junction, and Palisade, for earning the First Team Safe Sports School Award from the National Athletic Trainers Association. This recognition honors schools that go above and beyond to keep their student athletes safe through strong emergency preparedness, injury prevention, safe facilities, and education of both athletes and parents. The first team distinction represents the highest level of safety standards, and only 10 other schools in Colorado hold this title, making it the incredible accomplishment for all 4 of our high schools to earn it. This achievement reflects the hard work and expertise of our athletic trainers and our partnerships with Community Hospital's Western Orthopedics and Sports Medicine team. Together, they ensure our student athletes have the care, knowledge, and confidence they need to compete safely and successfully. Tonight, the Board of Education and Superintendent Dr. Brian Hill proudly congratulate our schools and their partners on this outstanding achievement. Thank you for all your education of health, safety, and success of our student athletes across D51.
All right. We have another recognition, but this one's actually going to fall under the board's good things. So Director Lima and I are going to actually come up to the front for this one. So. So we're going to invite Dr. Christensen up, and then Delita from the Business Incubator, and Janie Van Winkle as well. So this summer, Director Lima and I had a chance to have lunch with Janie and Delita, and they presented an amazing idea to us to have Mark Perna come and present. I don't know if any of you guys had the chance to actually hear him the evening. Well, I know Jory did because he was hosting us at Grand Junction High School. It was just an amazing evening to hear what Mark had to present. And so we were just very thankful for them. And then they had the idea that we could sell tickets and give the funds to the foundation. So I just want to give you guys the opportunity to share, and thank you so much for doing this. So. Who wants to go first? There you go.
Thank you so much for agreeing to do this together with us. It shows how amazing our community is with the work that you do. So it is our pleasure to do this and partner with you and do things together. You are de facto raising our future entrepreneurs. And so that is something that we are incredibly proud of. Thank you for all the hard work that you do. This is very little compared to what you do every day. So I hope that this is a spark of an amazing partnership that we have and amazing new things to come.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for doing this with us. It was truly an honor to bring Mark Perna to our community and hear ideas that can be incorporated into the district. And it was a great pleasure to be able to partner with the District 51 Foundation. So thank you all.
Well, this was certainly an easy yes when I received this phone call. Goodness. It really aligns with everything that we believe in, which is partnering with our community. And so this was a combination of the Business Incubator and School District 51 and CMU and the D51 Foundation. And so we'll put this toward good use. But thank you. You were a delight to work with. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. We appreciate you. Sorry, we're a little out of our normal procedure here, so. All right, board. Any community, or excuse me, committee or activity updates or any other good things that you'd like to share from last 2 weeks?
Director Jones and I met this morning at Central High School with a group of students over there, our twice annual visit with students, and had a great conversation. Always nice to communicate directly with a group of students, feed them a little Chick-fil-A and have a great conversation. So that was a terrific morning.
Was it last week we all had an opportunity at Grand Junction High School to meet with some of the students over there, had some good conversations over there, got some insight as to some of the clubs that they have over there, and some of the good things that are going on with that, as in they have no lack of participation, but trying to figure out ways for them to better recruit for that. Some good conversations were had around that, and then I had an opportunity to witness the Golden Apple Award, which I'm sure that'll be talked about here in just a little bit. And then I got to spend some time in Dr. Whiteford's class. Always a good time. So what turned into a brief 15-minute introduction ended up into an entire class of just a blast. And I had an opportunity to go to Orchard Mesa's end of quarter celebration. So they always do such a great job with that, and have some conversations with staff and students over there. And then I got to spend some time at Dos Rios on that same day. And I did have my Grand River Academy student meeting. And so we had more seniors in that than anything else. And just like one of the girls last year when we were talking, she was talking about the Fire Academy, but now she's going through the EMS program. And she's just something. Like, she works at Powderhorn, and she's a full-time student, and she. And just the other kids are just so awesome, and they're just so full of like energy over there. So I love, even though it's like an online, I don't know, I guess you think like in person will just be more personable, but those kids are just so full of energy. They have such great personalities. Yeah. They're online all the time for class, so I guess it just becomes like part of their thing. You know what I mean? But it was a great meeting. And yeah, I think that, and we have student council tomorrow, I think. R5. Yep. So, all good things.
How was Central?
Central was
Feedback.
great. It was a lot of good conversation, and the kids had a different perspective of things. It was always good to hear about the things that are going on, but we talked to them about what they want to see different, and what we would do different as a board, and what they see as their pluses and minuses. And it's always good to hear that everybody feels welcome about the changeover with admin, and they're very highly on Principal Hayward, and they like how he's very sociable and can talk to them all, and just the all admin staff. And there's another sense of belonging. And then we talked about some of their educational needs, or how they feel things could be different with teachers and things. But it was very positive and very good. And I think it's different than what we've heard from the other ones. So I thought it was good.
Great. I appreciate the updates from those student groups. So, all right. I apologize. I usually allow everybody a moment to recess, but they did anyway. So, yes, it's okay. All right. Well, thank you, board, for the updates. Anything else? All right. Sierra, we're ready for our D51 happenings and celebrations.
I sent it to you. Okay. Hi, board. I'm Sierra Hawkins, Communications and Marketing Specialist for D51, here to share with you the D51 happenings and celebrations. Kicking things off with our Golden Apple, meet October's winner, Gloria Reyes, a powerhouse at Grand Junction High with 18 years supporting our culturally and linguistically diverse students, and 24 years total with D51. Gloria is the heart behind our newcomer program, helping students adjust to a new country, culture, and language with compassion and care. She bridges gaps, builds trust, and champions every student she serves. We're so proud to honor Mrs. Reyes as this month's Golden Apple recipient. Thanks to a generous donation from the Grand Junction Lions Club and matching funds from D51, over 80 NUMWorks calculators are now in the hands of students at Central, Palisade, Fruita Monument, and R5 High School. The D51 Foundation applied for the Lions Club grant last year to help ensure all students have access to essential learning tools. A huge thank you to the GJ Lions Club for their continued generosity and for being such an engaged and supportive community partner of D51. Fruita Monument High School recently hosted the Adapted Soccer Tournament, which brought together students from every D51 high school, both with and without disabilities, for a day of fun and teamwork. Big shout out to Katie Hummel, D51 Adaptive Physical Education teacher, for organizing these incredible opportunities that showcase the best of D51, and a special thanks to Project Search with Community Hospital for providing first aid services and water, keeping everyone safe and hydrated throughout the event. Seeing the smiles on every student's face and heart behind and hearing the cheers from both sides of the field was truly heartwarming. If you haven't been to one of these events yet, you're missing out. It's an incredible display of our D51 spirit. Bookcliff Middle School wrapped up the first quarter with a school-wide game of rock, paper, scissors that brought the entire school together. Throughout the week, Mustangs faced off during passing periods, lunch, and before and after school, earning bracelets and necklaces with each win. At the final assembly, those lucky enough to collect them joined a school-wide showdown. Nearly 100 players narrowed down to just one champion. Thanks to the BMS Student Council and Principal Brian Dickus for showing how connection and fun build school spirit and belonging. Last week, all four of D51's comprehensive high schools competed in the 2025 Colorado Bandmasters Association Western Slope Regional State Qualifier, performing alongside 12 other marching bands from across the region. Each band showcased its talent to proudly represent our district. All four of our high schools placed in the top 3 in their class. Special thanks to Kathy Joseph, D51 Music Coordinator, for helping make this event possible, and to all the students, directors, and families whose hard work and commitment led to these outstanding performances. Mil gracias, or a million thanks, to Anna Heilman, the artist behind the beautiful new mural at Dual Immersion Academy, made possible through the support of DIA's PTA. This vibrant artwork welcomes students each morning with messages of positivity, confidence, and purpose. The mural was created to celebrate the school's dual language culture and remind students that their voices, identities, and stories matter. Thank you, Anna, for continuing to make our D51 schools brighter and more inspiring through your work at DIA, Wingate, Mesa View, and Rocky Mountain. Monument Ridge Elementary's first LEGO League teams recently welcomed James Coburn, a Colorado Mesa University professor of archaeology and Japanese. He gave students valuable insight as they worked on innovation projects that solve real-world problems through creativity and STEM. Mr. Coburn shared challenges archaeologists face, helping students strengthen their projects on artifact recovery and preservation. Special thanks to MRE coach Madison Krause and teachers Brittany Bristol, Felicia Gyensen, and Leslie Weaver for connecting students with real-world experts and inspiring innovation in the classroom. And at D51, we know it takes a village to keep our schools running smoothly, and our custodians are at the heart of that village, especially as we enter sickness season. Their hard work makes all the difference in keeping our classrooms clean, safe, and ready for learning. From early mornings to late nights, they go above and beyond so students can thrive and teachers can focus on teaching. To our custodians, thank you for your care, dedication, and pride in what you do. We're so grateful for you. Happy Custodian Appreciation Day. And that's all we have for our October happenings and celebrations. Be sure to keep up with all the latest D51 happenings by following us on social media at D51 Schools. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you very much.
I know I probably shouldn't say this, but I got to go
But
to
you're
the
going
band
to anyways.
competition, and I didn't say it last time, but I'm going to say it this time. Central was amazing. They did such a great
Sorry, can you
job.
say that one more time?
Simmer down.
I'm
The
sorry.
band,
Oh,
the band though.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Sorry.
I think you
I
can
mean,
say
it's still
anything-
sports. I
Anything
mean,
central. You're good.
It is. So they were amazing. And then I think, but none of we're all 3A and 4A, right? So none of them will be competing here for state. It'll all be in Colorado Springs. Dang it. They did. It was really great.
What trip?
Awesome.
For real.
Well, yeah. I think you can brag on any of our schools. It's all good. So we have some healthy competition amongst the board for favorite schools. So, all right. Next up, we have our superintendent's report. So Shannon's already ready to go. So thank you, Shannon, for. But Dr. Hill, why don't you kick it off and introduce it?
So Shannon is here to present. We do this annually, as y'all know, but for the community, an update on where we are currently with our enrollment, and then what the projections are showing for out years. And obviously, this has been important over the last few years, as we've had to make some decisions based on these numbers. And so Shannon's going to present that data to us tonight, and then y'all can ask any questions you might have. So I'll kick it over to Shannon.
Very good. Thank you so much. Well, good evening, everybody. I have some basic observations and then a couple of big takeaways that I'd like to make sure everybody understands. We continue to decline from an enrollment standpoint. We have 470 fewer students this year than we had in the CDE count that was published to their website last year. Cohort effects are the main reason for decline. So we have 350 fewer kindergartners than seniors. So the big takeaway is that students are not leaving Mesa County. They're not leaving our school district. Families are not leaving. The composition of the existing community is changing and trending towards smaller families. So as people interpret this data of enrollment decline and assume that people are leaving, that's just fundamentally not true. I'd like to make sure that as a community, we understand that the composition of the folks that are here is just changing, as are other school communities throughout the West. So right now I have 18 active engagements from here to Anchorage. And I would say in half of those, we are declining in enrollment because the incoming primary age grades are smaller than the outgoing high school age grades. And that's just a standard adjustment moving through. And I'm looking for some sort of stability coming to this district and others in the coming 5 years or so as those cohorts stabilize in a new kind of national family-sized norm that school demographers are seeing in our immediate future. The last 2 years, we've had two good years where births increased. And again, that's suggesting that I'm going to start looking for us to bottom out at some point. There's new housing growth in West Grand Junction and Fruita, but there's not enough of it to reverse enrollment decline. So the other important takeaway is that 99.9% of our housing stock every year is existing housing. So there can be a social trend within the existing housing stock that will vastly overshadow the less than 1% of the housing stock that is new. So if we see a lot of new homes being built around the district, a lot of folks might assume that that's going to result in there being a lot of growth. But because it is a 99% of existing housing stock versus 1% of new housing stock, it takes a lot of new housing in an affordable category to really make a difference from an enrollment growth standpoint. And what's being built in the district continues to be constructed by smaller contractors in smaller chunks, even though we're starting to see some rays of light in Fruita and West Grand Junction with quite a bit of housing being constructed, and I'll address that in just a moment. We're also beginning to see some of our builders and developers responding to the need for more affordable housing in a family price point category. And we're seeing a bit of that in Fruita currently that I'll address in just a moment. So for next year, I'm forecasting another 397 students reduction, again, based on a big grade going out and a small grade coming in. So, you know, there's no blame to be assigned. It's just a demographic phenomenon where a large group of students leaves and they're being replaced by a smaller group of kids. So over the next 5 years, given the way the cohorts are stacked, we're going to see another 1,326 students reduction. And again, people are not leaving Fruita, Grand Junction, Palisade, Whitewater, unincorporated Mesa County. It's just an adjustment in how our families are structured. We have 4 elementary schools that will actually grow. The rest of the schools will decline a bit. The enrollment effects of our prior consolidation efforts have been as forecasted. There were no surprises. So everything that we were looking at as far as most of the parent behaviors that I was anticipating actually played out the way that I thought they would, and the numbers for the residual schools in the wake of the consolidations that this district elected to do worked out the way that we thought they did. And a lot of people are to thank for retaining those children. Everything that I'm showing you here is preliminary, and we'll update that as our counts are finalized. So here's this cohort thing that I'm talking about. So these color-coded diagonal trends that show these enrollment counts are like the class of 2026 is shown in red over there on the right. Class of 2027, class of 2028. As you go younger into the grades, those are graduating classes of kids as they advance from 3 to 4, 4 to 5, 5 to 6, 6 to 7. And if you follow those red arrows, you'll see that those cohorts or those graduating classes move through those grades relatively intact. Now, every year we have a certain amount of increase from 8 to 9 when we get kids back from non-neighborhood school providers into our comprehensive high schools. And then, like every other district in the United States, we have students that leave us going from 9 to 10 and 10 to 11. And so we have a standard amount of departure of those high school kids. But the good news for our district is that all of these cohorts are stable. Everybody that gets on the bus to go to school in the graduating class of 1996, or I'm sorry, of 2026, has stayed on the bus. They do not get off the bus. So they stay with us as they move through time. But you can see going from 2024 to 2025, we lost 470 kids in our count. Those kids did not leave. They successfully graduated and matriculated out of our system and were replaced by a smaller group of children. So you can see our 12th grade on the right, 1598, and our kindergarten class over on the left, 1241. That's what I'm addressing here, is that is the nature of the enrollment decline phenomenon in this school district. As far as our births, we've had a couple of good years where we've gone from a low of 1390 up to 1433 up to 1535. So these are children that are born in the geographic boundary of the district. So that's kind of a harbinger that makes me scratch my head about how many kindergartners will I have in 5 years. So that's a positive indicator for us. As far as development around the valley, this shows what's happening in Fruita with Karima, with Iron Wheel, West Canyon, and the Futa Muse, which is an affordable development with 50 townhomes. And so we're beginning to see quite a bit of activity, but again, that's probably 250 units on that table. A lot of those are already constructed, and that's going to help us at Monument View and Rimrock, Monument Ridge rather, I'm sorry. But it's not going to be something that's going to exceed the capacity of those schools and turn our enrollment circumstances around, given the fact that this is 1% of the housing stock or less. And what's happening in the other 99% of people that live in existing housing is going to overshadow what happens in the new. Just quickly talking about the Redlands a little bit, there's a huge vacant lot phenomenon happening in the Redlands right now. So a lot of vacant lots for sale. A lot of these are $200,000 lots for the most part. So the home that's going to result from those is going to look like what's in the middle of that, the photo in the middle of that. They're going to be roughly $900 to $1.3 million homes. And that's not going to produce a significant number of children. So regarding the safety of our decision to deactivate and repurpose Scenic Elementary, we are not in a risk circumstance in the Redlands. We are going to continue to be just fine with Broadway and Wingate addressing our elementary school needs. Some townhome construction is happening there, but again, even with Redlands 360 that has 5 homes in the parade of homes that are currently unoccupied, we're just not looking at huge numbers in the Redlands. Pomona, we actually have quite a bit of affordable housing being built. Founders Colony is got about a dozen units that are available now or under construction. And then there's a new apartment and townhome development called Nexus that has popped up very quickly, surprised me. I drove past it one moment and it was a vacant lot, and drove past it the next moment and it had built units with a parking lot full of cars. So a lot going on there in Pomona, but that has not affected the enrollment of the school. So Pomona continues to be stable or static. Dos Rios, we've got a couple of developments happening over there, maybe a dozen homes under construction in that entire attendance area. Again, it's not affecting the enrollment of Dos Rios, and Dos Rios is turning into one of our smaller schools. So my forecast continues to reflect this idea of the stability of our cohorts as they move through the system. And so I'm forecasting that we're going to continue to decline in our count, but it's not going to be as dramatic as it has been in recent years. As more of these big grades move out, we have more stability from the smaller grades that are coming in. So you can see that my average expectation for net change over the next 5 years is around 300 fewer students per year. Again, people aren't leaving. It is just these big cohorts are cycling out of the system. Those children are matriculating, they're getting their diplomas, and they're moving on to their next experience in life, and they're being replaced by a smaller grade. Around the district, some of the schools that are getting big and continue to grow include Appleton, Fruitvale, somewhat as a result of our boundary change there. Monument Ridge and Rimrock will continue to grow by as a result of some of the housing initiatives that are happening in that northeast Fruita area. Our other secondary schools will continue to be stable. And there are 2 numbers shown there next year and 5 years out. So there's 2026 and 2030 if you would like to look at those. Some of our schools continue to be rather small. So you can see that we still have quite a few schools in that mid-200s range. But for the most part, as you look from 2026 to 2030, we will become more durable than we have been in the past. So there's a restatement of the points that I just made, and I would be delighted to respond to any questions that you might have.
So I actually do have, it's kind of a compounded question, I guess. So the last time that Colorado did a census was in 2023, correct?
Well, the last decennial census was in April of 2019. And then the American Community Survey does a long-form style survey that allows mid-decade counts. And that has been posting annually since the decennial census, which was the 2020 census. They've been posting numbers that show D51 growing every year from a total population standpoint. Now, the Census Bureau is essentially offline and has been for the last 3 or 4 weeks, so I can't get any tables off their website due to the government shutdown. But for the most part, April of 2019 was the last full-scale census.
Yeah, I know we moved here in 2020, and I felt like it was, I think, 23 when we had some people coming through our neighborhood that were with the Census Bureau, I believe. But I'm not sure if it was full-scale Colorado, what it was. I just remember it. But anyway, I guess where I was going with that is, you know, some of our data kind of starts around 2023 with like exiting, entering, things like that. And then I guess my question is that we have kids that are clearly being born, and I know that I'm looking and I'm seeing that there are lower birth rates across the United States. However, I feel like we have a lot of people that are moving in, moving out. Would we have any data at any point that would show, and would we have to wait for the census to get this data that would show if the people that are coming in that have children that are of that age, are they choosing to school of choice, homeschool, parochial school? I mean, how could we obtain anything like that? I know that there's a lot of reporting that happens to the district with parents that traditionally homeschool because they have to provide, that letter every year, but umbrella schools, it's not quite like that. And some other types of, school of choice, it doesn't require reporting. So how would we know that if people are coming in that if they have kids, that they are not sending them to D51, or that they are choosing other avenues of education?
So the census will be an incredibly poor choice for something of that detail. But the Colorado Department of Education, the third week of January, publishes data that indicates how many children are in a non-neighborhood school destination in D51. And it's either our schools, the adjacent districts, and then the Colorado Charter School Institute has a record-keeping capacity of its own that says how many kids are in a CSI school like Capstone. And then furthermore, we have CDE collecting data on homeschool enrollment, and D51's own data monitoring and collection systems have very good data, the best data probably on the number of children enrolled in homeschool. Now, a lot of this is not overtly reported, and I have to look at indicators elsewhere in order to understand what's happening here. So, for example, for Goal Academy, our at-risk online high school program that has a drop-in center down on Main, they are sanctioned by D49 and Falcon, and they're run out of Pueblo, Colorado. But my way of figuring out how many Goal Academy kids we have is I see what D49's what D49 is drawing out of D51 into D49 from Mesa County. So I'm looking at who they're enrolling to determine, is it 600 this year like it was last year, or has it risen to 700? So all these kind of oddball places, I have to do an Easter egg hunt to go around and get that kind of data. But as far as new residents goes, there's not really a way in real time within a 24-month kind of a cycle to understand who's bringing children in and what kind of choices are they making, other than doing some sort of a community survey. And because those parents are not in our database, if they did not choose a D51 neighborhood school, we don't really have a great way to reach them. Now, anecdotals, focus groups with parents, a lot of times you can gain some really high quality data if you convene groups of that type. And some districts actually do convene groups of parents that are not home district parents in order to get that kind of anecdotal data. But as far as getting something accurate and current, it's pretty difficult to get something like that.
The other
Very convoluted answer to the question, but I'm just describing, as far as the Easter egg hunt to go around and get all the little bits and pieces in order to comment on how dedicated are local families to the D51 neighborhood school option. We are able to collect that, and I run that on an ongoing basis for the district. So if you want to know what's the total number of kids according to the census that live here and how many are in a D51 neighborhood school, I can use census to tell you what your market share is. We haven't done a market share study in quite a while because D51 does not have the level of charter school or CSI schooling numbers that other big districts that have 28% of their enrollment in charters, like Greeley 6 or Douglas County or Falcon 49 or Academy 20. They all have charter school enrollments in the mid 20s, and we don't. Our charter school, our church school, our CSI numbers are fractional, I would guess significantly less than 10%. And the majority of children that bring their families to Grand Junction, Fruita, Palisade are putting their kids in a D51 neighborhood program. Now, choice within our own school districts, own schools, on our own neighborhood list, we can do a choice school analysis. It has historically been 86% of kids stay in their neighborhood school and 14% go shopping for another D51 neighborhood school. But if you wanted to see what do all of those players look like, you could request that through the superintendent, and I could show who's in Capstone, who's in, what's the new one that just opened over here behind us?
Ascent.
Pardon?
Ascent.
Yeah, Ascent. So Capstone, Ascent, church schools I can inventory, and then we can look at, show our own charters that are sanctioned by you as a market share, and then we can do an accounting of our neighborhood schools. And then I can go back to that 2020 census, and I can tell you how many 5 to 9-year-olds actually were here according to that count. So that's an imperfect analysis, but it's a market share analysis that I'm occasionally asked to do.
You know, just because you mentioned Goal Academy, I'll just throw it out there. I'm sure they're nice people, but their results, unfortunately, they get lumped together across the entire state, so they get one rating. And when you really break down the results, they're not as strong as our Grand River Academy school. So, you know, anybody out there that wants to put their kid in an online school, they actually should enroll them in Grawl because it's a much stronger program. So the other thing, though, I just want to mention is this is, I have from last year, and I'll ask, Elizabeth Gardner's not with at the state level anymore. I forgot the person who's taken over for her now, but the state demographer. But remember, she put out the report last year, and I can resend it to the board, but I can ask her for an updated one. And the trends are exactly what you're saying. I mean, she was projecting that she looks at kids in the entire county, right? So not just within the district's boundaries, but she projected that we were going to continue to decline on the number of kids within our county through 2032. I don't know if that shifts now that the birth rates have gone up a little bit, but she was saying you're not going to actually start to bottom out until 2032 with the number of kids in your county. And then she has those rows that breaks it down by like grade level. And so, you know, you can see our peak with 5 to 11-year-olds was 2016, and then ever since then it's gone down. So it matches up with exactly what you're saying, and that was what the state demographer shared as well. And again, we can get an updated version of this and see if it changes. But her last time she presented to us, she said we're never going to get. She didn't project us to ever get back to pre-pandemic numbers of kids in our county. And so, and if we're going to continue to decline overall in the number of kids through 2030 or 2032, it's just something as a district we're going to have to continue to have a discussion around and deal with the declining numbers across our entire county. So I just wanted to reiterate that matches what you were presenting as well.
And also, Dr. Hill had pulled recent numbers for the board, just a couple months ago?
Oh, for the kids that leave and come in?
Yeah, well, because we had asked, which leads me, I think, to my question, because I think we had asked, like, what is our in and out of state migration, and then what kids do we lose and gain from charter, homeschool, and private school,
Mm-hmm.
and it seemed like we were still maybe losing some kids to out of state migration, just a few higher than what we get from, that come in from, out of state. That number was still a little bit high, that they
Yeah.
were still leaving the state. And then as far as like the other educational options like charter, homeschool, and private school, that is still basically a net zero. It's a wash. As many leave for those options, they return right back to D51.
Well, and actually, and you're right, the past couple years had been that way. This year, actually, we gained more kids back from homeschool than left, which was a shift for us. And then we also gained back more students from non-public than we lost for non-public, like almost twice the amount. So for me, when I saw those numbers, I thought, well, if we're still down
Yeah.
470 kids and we gained more kids than we lost to these options, it could have been even worse, I guess, is the way I looked at it. So,
So
but yeah,
we've
this was
been-
the trend shifted a little bit this year where we were getting more coming back than we were losing.
Right.
Yeah.
So Dr. Hill's been really good about providing the board with that information, because I know I constantly have people thinking that we're losing kids outside of the district, and that's just not what the data is showing. And we're actually gaining more kids back, but we're obviously still a net negative kids, which obviously that makes sense if we're just, those cohorts are smaller. So Shannon, do you think we've lost the majority of our kids out of state? Like, we've already kind of seen that trend happen, like families for the most part have left our area in Colorado, that we'll see for the most part. I mean, some are still going to come and go, but do you think that the majority of that has taken place?
There are two things happening around the Western U.S. right now as far as migration goes. Young families are leaving high housing cost areas and moving to other places. So, for example, I go down and visit my mom in San Antonio and drive down the Corpus Christi, and I see Colorado plates all over the place. So I think that young families are leaving Colorado. They're going to central Kansas. They're going to the Dallas-Fort Worth area. They're going to southern Arizona. They're going to southern Idaho. They're going to other places where they can get a more affordable house and not rent anymore. But that's an anecdotal observation of a very fractional set of folks that are leaving. And the durability of our cohorts, as I showed you, really demonstrate that that's not changing the trajectory of our ship, basically.
Right.
Everybody's staying on the bus, and our student count changes are as a result of that cohort adjustment. There's also a bit of folks moving around for political reasons right now between states, and some folks are beginning to document those changes. But again, as I showed you in that color-coded graphic, everybody in D51 is staying on the bus for the most part. Also around the West, a lot of families are coming back from online opportunities that they elected during COVID on a delayed basis. So especially during SY 24-25, around the West, we had a lot of surprises as a lot of these COVID kids came back from online because their parents kept them out for another 18 to 24 months until they thought the coast was clear to put them back into an in-person experience. And we've seen surprises all up and down the West Coast, in other parts of Colorado and Alaska, where COVID kids have come back late. So there's a bit of that. But again, these are 1.5%, 2.5% phenomenon that I'm talking about that are hard to measure. Those do add up. I think the central message, though, is that everybody in D51 is staying on the bus. Our cohorts are the same size that they are as we go year to year. We're just part of this once-in-a-generation change in family size. We're going to have to weather that storm for another 5 or 6 years until we stabilize at that size. And that's a future that seems pretty certain.
Okay. Any other questions for Shannon? All right. Well, thank you for the information. Yeah.
You're most welcome.
Shannon.
All right. And then next up, we'll have Mel come on up and share with us our quarterly financial update.
All right. Good evening, Board. Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight our end-of-year financial results for 24-25. and then our first quarter financial update for the current fiscal year. The business and investment reports are prepared quarterly by our staff and reviewed by the Fiscal Oversight Committee that we meet with ahead of time. They also prepare a memo to the board, which is included in your packets. Want to remind everyone that our budgets, our annual audits, and other financial information continues to be posted on the Financial Transparency website for the district, and so that information is always available. But in tonight's presentation, I'll be focusing on 3 areas: those key financial results from 24-25, 25-26 Q1 updates, and then I also want to spend some time talking about the pressures and challenges that we're already starting to monitor and plan for next year. So the 24-25 general fund statement is the first page in your packets after the memo from the Fiscal Oversight Committee. We ended the year a little bit stronger, about $1.2 million than projected back in March, which was primarily due to the sustained receipts on the revenue side. Unassigned fund balance at 6/30 was $7.6 million, with revenues at 101.69% of budget, so 0.19% above what we were projecting in March. And expenditures came in at 99.98% of budget, which was 0.46% above March projections. Specific ownership tax collections, which is the local taxes paid on vehicle registrations, those remain strong. Those are somewhat unpredictable until we receive them, but they remain strong through the end of the fiscal year. And then interest earnings beat projections as well due to the delayed Fed rate cuts, as well as the district's continued efforts to really maximize that revenue line item through our investment policy. So these are pretty tight margins. Usually 3 to 4% is considered in the acceptable range. We really try to keep it to within 1 to 2%, but these are really very close to those March projections this time. So looking at our 24-25 ending unassigned and committed fund balance, it was equal to 23.1% of expenditures, which is a 0.5% above what was projected. An estimated $3.2 million of that unassigned fund balance, which is the portion exceeding the 20% reserve minimum, will be used to fund those one-time COLA in lieu payments for staff that was agreed to after the budget was adopted. Those will be formally added during the budget readoption, but they're already included in your 25-26 end of year projections if you're looking at this first quarter. So you'll see those, and they will be paid in 2 installments, December and May payrolls to staff. So the remaining unassigned reserves serve as a critical buffer in case final student count funding comes in lower than we had budgeted for, which I think is fairly likely this year. And it also provides a safety net for one-time needs that may arise throughout the year. Want to say it again, but reserves are one-time dollars and not an ongoing source of funding for operating expenses.
So Mel, if I could take just the opportunity to make sure that our community really understands this. We were able to have above that 20% minimum in our reserves, and that's how we were able to do the one-time COLA.
Yep. And again, we're matching one-time costs with one-time dollars.
Correct. There's no other place to replace that money once it's gone. So it's really important that everybody understands that it's a pretty big deal that we have that kind of a buffer.
Well, and we're using
Without it and this continued declining enrollment, we could really end up in a sticky position with no new money continuing and the old money being depleted. So
correct. I think we've made the decisions through these certainly last year coming into this year was challenging, but just over the course of the last several years to put ourselves in the best position possible where our budget is sustainable. We aren't committed to ongoing deficits. And that'll be really important when I start talking about what we're looking at for next year, is to be in that spot of being okay and not having that deficit to dig out of first with some of the funding things that might be coming down the pike.
So what would we be looking at if we did end up with that deficit?
What do you mean? Like if we had an ongoing deficit?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it just compounds the issues, right? And so if we already were committed to salary and benefits, that we didn't have a sustainable ongoing revenue source, we'd either have to reduce those, pull those back, which we never want to be in a position to have to do that, or make cuts elsewhere in order to sustain them. I guess it puts us in a hole to begin with. Before we can make any other decisions. So we would first need to cover those. And then every year we always have those required costs, like our contract increases, our health insurance premium increases, if there's a change to para increase, something like that, any of those unavoidable cost changes in utilities. And so we would just be compounding that before we could talk about what we wanted to add or look at based on our funding. Does that make sense? Yep. So beyond just the general fund, I want to touch on some other funds that are facing pressures in our system. In general, there's an overall tightening of budgets, whether we're talking about grants, whether we're talking about some of our other funds outside of the general fund across the district. And so for the end of year 24-25, several of our funds did end up using a portion of their reserves to meet ongoing costs. And so looking at the preschool, which is Fund 19 in your packets, that fund used $142,000 of reserves. Unlike K-12 funding, which is based on that single October count day, UPK Universal Preschool is funded based on enrollment throughout the year. So that makes their revenue source a little bit more unpredictable than it used to be. So that's something we're going to continue to watch every month to see what that enrollment is and how that's going. And currently the general fund is also partially supporting that fund because the amounts from UPK aren't sufficient to cover the cost. And so we're annually transferring $400,000 from our general fund into this fund, which we'll need to continue to monitor and make sure that's appropriate. This is another fund that they had some like startup universal preschool type grants that have kind of dried up or are expiring. And so that'll only add to the pressures here. So that's one we're watching. They're okay for right now. They have reserves, but it's definitely something we want to, again, make sure that that ongoing piece is accounted for. Nutrition Services, which is our Fund 21, they use $350,000 of reserves. And I just want to say our Nutrition Services staff does a phenomenal job managing the costs and adjusting their costs to their revenues. That's something that they're always really proactive on. But the meal reimbursement rates just haven't kept pace with the rising staff costs and food costs. And then the other thing in this fund is that the future of healthy school meals for all will be decided in the upcoming election. And so that'll shape kind of the revenue streams of that fund going forward. Outside of the general fund, risk management, our Fund 64 is probably the most pressing concern that I see right now. That fund used about $1 million of reserves last year, driven by rising insurance premiums, claim costs, higher staff costs, and general fund is the primary source of revenue that supports that fund as well. I know that since I've been involved in budget, we haven't increased that transfer into that fund, but I actually went back today and that transfer, just going back over the years, has never been lower than it is right now. There's been a couple years where it was higher than the $1.5 million, but it's been $1.5 million since 2017. And so definitely it's time that that transfer is no longer sufficient for the costs. So that'll be a priority ideally in our mid-year budget readoption, but certainly for next year's budget planning to increase.
And did you say you're planning to increase it to 1.5? Is that what I heard you say?
It currently is 1.5. If I'm looking just at last year and using 1 million of reserves, in order for that fund to be kind of self-sustaining, it would need to be about 2.5 million. I don't think we can get there, quite frankly, because of the other budgetary needs across our system, but we at least need to move at least 500,000 more to that fund, to that transfer, and have a plan to increase it over time. It's kind of easy to focus on the challenges these days, but there were a couple of highlights that I also want to bring forward. And the Fund 41, which is our building fund of the bond proceeds for the new Grand Junction High School, the final invoices are finally coming in on that, and we're really wrapping up and getting close to having a final number. But that project remains under budget, and we haven't needed to use the interest earnings that have accumulated during this project. And so, again, hope to have a final number soon.
Can you tell us what those were? The interest?
I think it was around 7 million.
Okay.
Yep. So that's a good-ish number for today. I want to have obviously a much more exact number, but the remaining funds will be returned to taxpayers through temporary credits on their property tax bills. That was something that was written into the ballot language, and so the way that we'll do that likely will be through that temporary tax credit. And as long as we have a final number before the December mill levy certification, something that we'll be able to include at that time.
Excellent, thank you.
And then Fund 62, that's our district's self-insured medical insurance fund. That fund ended the year balanced in a stable position and finally back at the target level of reserves at 10.5 million. You'll remember that this fund was at near zero reserves just a few years ago. It ended 2021 at 750,000. Our annual expenses in this fund are about $28 million. So this is a much more manageable place to be. But we'll continue to monitor the increasing claim costs, the impact of the rate adjustments during open enrollment. And open enrollment is open right now for staff. It goes through the end of this month through next Friday. And just importantly, the district will be able to continue to cover 100% of the employee insurance premium. We know that's something that's really important for retaining and recruiting our staff, and so we are glad to be able to continue that. So turning to this year's financials, that's the second set of financial statements in your packets. Revenues and expenditures so far are tracking as we would expect, following similar patterns to recent years. In the general fund, our revenues are at 22.85% of budget through September 30th, the end of the first quarter. Last year at this time, they were 23.24% of our end of year actual, so really close there. Expenses similarly, they're outpacing last year a little bit at 23.67% of budget. Last year we were at 23.39% of our end of year actual. But these early figures indicate that our budget planning was appropriate to this point in the year. We're only a quarter in, and so it's still really early, but we'll continue monitoring those trends and reporting back quarterly. Before I get into kind of the next year's funding or the things that we're watching, are there any questions on the statements themselves?
Just one quick one on the health insurance plan. I'd just like to throw out some thanks to Connie Mack and all of the individuals that have worked so hard for the last 4 years, making sure that that fund became stable and that we had a good product for all of our employees. And also thank you to everybody who works so hard making sure that we can continue to pay that 100% of the employee premiums. There are very few businesses anywhere or organizations that can do that anymore. So that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mel, on the preschool, so Fund 19 and Fund 21, so I know there was a lot of frustration with school districts around really the governor not talking to districts about universal pre-K and how that should have been rolled out and even possibly funded. And then I think it ended up kind of getting dropped in our laps, and then we all had to figure out basically how to get it done in numerous ways. I mean, ongoing, what do you see that we're going to have to continue to fund for preschool? I mean, if we're at 142 out of reserves right now, I mean, what do you, and again, I know I can't hold you to anything, but what do you think we're going to have to continue to fund preschool? And especially because I think the way they sold it was that there would be all these grants that would help districts, and we all know that grants are drying up left and right. There's just no grant money left. And so
I know they go out for like the Buell grant. There's some other funding opportunities that we don't know if they're going to come through yet for this year. I mean, I think without that, the natural numbers would be a $500,000 transfer. But they've also made some changes and just how they're structuring things a little bit. And so I'm really hoping that that fund, they're budgeting to not necessarily need all of that transfer in this current year. I'm really hoping that that comes to fruition, that we can maybe even pull back a little bit because those funds are critically needed in other places in our district as well. So that's one that we don't want to over transfer, but we also need the fund to hold water too and stand afloat. And so that's one that I think the $400,000 transfer is appropriate. I just don't know how long we can sustain it.
Yeah.
In talking to other CFOs and people across the state, I think that's one of the frustrations with UPK and with the Healthy School Meals for All is that they're underfunded programs. And so while they're great opportunities for our system, who doesn't want to feed kids, who doesn't want to be able to provide universal preschool access, all of those things are great, but the reimbursement rates that districts are getting just don't meet the funding, the cost realities, I guess.
Yeah, it's borderline an unfunded mandate on districts. I mean,
We've been saying underfunded.
yeah, I know, yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, but
Yes.
yes, it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
It's the same. It's the same concept, right? And again, these are great things, right? We want to be able to provide preschool. We want to be able to provide, the lunches. But when Denver decides it and then pushes it out on districts, and then they don't ask districts how we need to implement it or give us the funding to do it, we have to take from somewhere else because it's a mandate. We can't opt to not do it. But then those dollars have to come from somewhere else. Or someone else or something else. And so I just want the community to understand all of the things that your department has to look at and what they have to do. And also from the board standpoint, the tough decisions that we have to make because some of these things are put in our lap that we don't get to decide what money we get to do with these things or not because we have to. So I mean, I appreciate what you guys get to do. And these are really great things that we want to do. But when the state says you have to do it and then they don't give you the money to do it, it's just really frustrating.
Agree.
So
Yep.
Appreciate it, Mel. Thank you.
So I realize that it's October, but we're already talking about 26, 27. And that's because of some of the significant funding challenges that are already kind of shaping up. That all early indications are that next year is going to be a really difficult funding year on multiple fronts. And so I just want to spend some time going through those. Federal funding, you'll recall that over the summer, nearly $2 million of our federal grant funds were frozen, ultimately released, but definitely it was a time of panic with those funds that were frozen and the staff that were already hired into positions for this school year. But with the delay at the federal level of having appropriations, that means that we still don't know with certainty if those same programs that were in question over the summer will be funded next year. So before the shutdown, there were several proposals that I had read that were kind of floating around, ranging from K-12 funding being kind of flat on allocations to severe reductions or eliminations of some of those same programs that were in question over the summer. At the state level, the state had a special session in August to address their budget shortfalls because they too are required to have a balanced budget, and they made some changes which thankfully didn't change our allocations or funding levels for the current year. Fall that they're working through in this year. But most concerning is that the Ledge Council put out that they're projecting that the state will have an $841 million shortfall next year for 26-27. I was saying our lobbyist last month, I think it was last month, presented to you guys and gave an update where already the session hasn't started. It won't start until January, but already kind of those discussions are happening where they might have to pull back on some of the promises that were agreed to last year around hold harmless provisions, around taking from our student count averaging was 5 years last year. It's been 5 years forever. It went to 4 years this year. Next year, it was supposed to go down to 3 years as long as they continued to implement the new funding formula. But she was indicating that there are already conversations that would negate those hold harmless provisions and take it down to 2 years. So those are really challenging when you have the rate of decline that our demographer is presenting to and that we've been experiencing. We're definitely a district that's impacted very heavily by those student count averaging changes.
So do you have a guesstimate or any idea? So just to make sure everybody's on pace with this, last year we got $1 million of new money, which is
Yes.
not a lot. It's almost nothing. But what they were kind of threatening was a reduction
Yes.
of over 9 million.
Yep, it was about 9.5 million, I believe.
Okay. So now we go down to the 2-year averaging next year. What do you think that might look like?
So
Do we
in the
have any, I mean, I don't want to put you
Yeah,
on the
these are
spot.
going to be ballpark numbers
Sure.
until we have kind of the final counts for this year that I can really base it on. But when it was 5-year averaging, we were receiving that $9.5 million. That's where that would be a reduction if it was pulled back because of student count averaging. This year, I was budgeting for that to be reduced to 7.5. And so I would imagine it's probably about a $2 million hit, just ballpark, if it goes down to 2 years, depending on kind of which years the steepest declines were falling in.
So you'll have a little bit, we won't have full, never mind. I'm just thinking after we get our official count.
Yep.
Give us part of the equation, but not the whole thing.
So then lastly, kind of the third head to this is the federal pressures, the state pressures, and then locally our continued enrollment declines and changes to student count averaging that are expected. So I think I'm going to get kind of into where you were going, Director Lima, or jump in if I'm not. But there are some key data points that will be known in the coming months or weeks. And so those will inform our decision making around planning for next school year. And so one of those is having a final October funded student count. That'll set our current year revenues and also serve as a baseline for those future projections into next year's and beyond, given the different funding scenarios. But then importantly, the governor must submit a budget proposal by November 1st. Every year. This year, November 1st is on a Saturday, so anticipating that maybe by next Friday we would have that. But this was, again, to your point, really the first point of data that we had last year that all of a sudden student count averaging was gone. We were looking at a large reduction. And while the state ultimately was able to pull from other areas in the budget to close their gap and save K-12 last year, at the state level, that really is looked to as what happened, that K-12 was one of the winners in general, and that a lot of other areas across state budgets took substantial reductions. And so again, having another almost $850 million shortfall that they're going to have to fill, there simply just aren't other places that they're going to be able to pull from this time around without impacting us. So I think the governor's budget is certainly something that we're going to be looking at, but we're not expecting that it's going to be favorable. I think we're pretty much expecting that there will be some level of cuts proposed to K-12. Again, awaiting those federal grant allocations, which will determine available resources for programs and positions currently supported by federal funding. And then having the final enrollment projections for 26-27, that's going to be able to guide both our funding and our staffing decisions as we start looking at staffing and planning for that as well. Lastly, the state's session will run from January to May. The state legislators ultimately set our PPR funding, not the governor's proposal, but his is always kind of a launching point. And so that'll certainly have our full attention as we hope to know our funding levels sooner rather than later. So to close, I guess just the reassurance that the district is in a stable financial position because of the planning and decisions that have been made to this point. But we're facing the likelihood of future structural challenges in the long term that will require further careful planning and the alignment of future spending with future revenues. At every step, we remain committed to prioritizing meeting the needs of our students and providing competitive compensation to retain our excellent staff. But like all districts in Colorado, we rely on state and federal funding, and inherently our financial stability depends on the decisions that are made at the federal and state levels. And so the uncertainties or the challenges at those levels definitely give us pause and continue to be difficult to plan for. This year, again, we're talking about this already in the year, but we plan to continue rolling out updates as we know some of these key data points, bringing our community, bringing the board and our staff along with us as we learn some of these, because the sooner we can understand the scope of potential reductions or what our funding might look like next year, the better we can plan for it and engage our community. Any other questions?
Thank you first. This is bothersome to me in a lot of ways.
Yes.
We look at the state budget shortfall of just 200 million, then we're looking at our budget cut about $4.4 million. 300 is like $6 million within our budget that we will lose. And didn't you say like declining enrollment was 2.5 or 1.5?
That's a guess. If they take it down to 2 years, I think it might be a $2 million reduction to us. Yeah.
So when we look at all that, then it looks like with all the other stuff that you have, that you wrote down, we have to watch out for and look at. The other parts we're going to have to take a look at is if we're going to look at closing schools, consolidate schools, or reduction of staff. Am I correct?
Well, we're not closing any schools for next year. I think that's safe to say at this point. Yeah. But yes.
That's something that we're going to have to start considering, right? Looking at if we do a mill levy, how is that going to go? So those are all plans that we're going to have to take a look at because the reduction within our budget is drastic.
Right. And I mean, it seems common, but you either have two options. Either you find a way to increase revenues through like community support, or you're talking spending reductions. That's really where we have to align our revenues to our expenses and pull that back into something that's sustainable. Yeah. Dr. Hill.
We're, and that work's happening right now. It's funny, I call them senior leadership retreats, but retreats are usually fun. These are not fun.
Sorry, I don't bring any fun.
Yeah, it's not fun meetings when you're talking about trying to find ongoing dollars and where you're going to make those reductions. And so, I think the last slide, I just want to highlight that we are committed to trying to figure out how to get back to steps, right? We don't want to go 2 years in a row with having to do stipends. And so we are trying to figure out how to do that so that we can, pay our folks what they deserve. But I don't want to overlook also the prioritizing educational needs. Like how do we continue to provide resources to our schools during this time as well? So we're looking internally, we've already cut 1.4 million from central office, but we're looking, at other areas. And it's just not a fun place to be in, but we are committed to trying to figure out how to get back on track with those things, as Mel said. But I think, you're right. The only way you can do this is either the state provides more funding or we get more through mill levy overrides. And I think going out for a mill levy override, if we can show that we've done everything we could do internally, hopefully that will help us. But, if this stuff frustrates you, and it is frustrating to have to have these same conversations every year, like the frustration should be directed at the state level because we're not being funded adequately. That study that was put out that the legislature asked for said $3.5 billion shortfall every year in K-12 education. Like we're not making a dent in that until something happens at the state level. And so we're down here at the district levels all trying to fight over these dollars when really it's an issue at the state level. And so if there's advocacy and things that we need to do, we need to be advocating at the state level to say we need more funding for K-12 education. When you hear that they promised that they were going to stair step the averaging and now they're not, and they're talking about going on a 2, like that's stuff that people should be calling and advocating to say you shouldn't be doing that because you didn't say you said you weren't going to do that. So I think that we're all frustrated in these moments. And that's it's not going to change unless we bring in more money from the state level, and we're also going to have to talk to our community at some point about how far behind we are on the levy overrides compared to our comparable districts. And so, I do appreciate all the work that Mel does to try to keep us balanced. And to your point, like if we have a sudden change like this is why we have reserves, so that if we have to do one-time things to kind of get us through those periods of time, we can. But this is tough for everybody. So I just want to reiterate that advocacy is great. Let's advocate at the state level to get more funding for K-12.
Jose Luis, I also just want to make sure that the point was made clear. That 2 million or that we would be shorted next year, that's if they keep their word on just taking us down to 2 years. If they do what they did last year, which was try to wipe the whole thing out, it's a lot more.
Then that's where we're closer to that 7 million number.
It goes to 7 million less.
And I think that that's likely. I mean, they've rolled that out last year as something that they really believe philosophically that we shouldn't be funding phantom students. We know that that's a mechanism that they would look to balance their own budgets now. Maybe if we didn't know that before, we know that now. The past tactics, of course, have been the budget stabilization factor or the negative factor, which reduced funding from any school district that received state funding. And so that was at least kind of a level reduction. It was still $250 million reduction over several years, but every district kind of shared in it proportionately. I think the changes to the student count averaging, it's not even, because in the areas that there are pockets of growth in our state, they might see new funding. And then the areas that are hit particularly hard by declining enrollment, like our area, are really going to struggle. I think some of the points that came up last year about them calling it phantom students were that given the inadequacy in funding levels, we're not funding phantom students. We're using the money that we're given to fund the students that are here. And so it'll be interesting to see if they stick with that same wording this year, I guess. But it definitely did not go over well with some of the information from the people on the ground that those dollars are being put to work and they're funding real needs that we have here due to our funding inadequacies.
What worries me, I think, the most about that is that due to the budget shortfall this year at the state level, they've already sort of robbed or taken from other areas to make up for what they had to do. And fortunately, we were skipped this year, but there comes a point there's nobody else to take from.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, I'm not thoroughly convinced that they're not going to go after that and try to fully take it away, and that we won't be facing a $7 million shortfall. So I think we need to kind of brace for impact, which I know you always are pretty good for, kind of hoping for the best but expecting the worst. And then I think you make a good point for us to remember, and Dr. Hill is pretty good about reminding us that with that $250 million with the negative factor or the budget stabilization factor, when they said they never made us whole. They just
stopped taking.
They just stopped taking it, yes. And so we never got any of that money back. And then Dr. Hill's really good about reminding everybody that now we're funded at 1989 levels, right? Excuse me. And so it's like, yeah, we all love the 80s, but not that part of the 80s. Like we're not living at 80 levels, groceries and so on and so forth. And so, so there's just some things that are just not working. And so this is really, in a sense, a crisis, that's coming from the state level. This isn't anything that, like Mel's team, I know there's been some information that's been put out there that really frustrates me, because your team has done a really good job at trying to help balance this and make sure that we are staying afloat. And this has really been a frustration from the state of not funding Mesa County adequately. And Jose Luis makes a good point, that, we are looking down some pretty interesting and scary things over the next couple of years about what we're still some challenges that we're going to have, and it is frustration from the state level. I mean, that's where we get the majority of our money, is the state and federal government. So, and one of the things that the board was tasked with looking at is, what can we ultimately do to get ready, things in order to then basically have to then look at what we can do with our own community support-wise. So we got to make sure that we have all of that in place. So really appreciate all the things that you guys do, but this has definitely not been a fair process from the state side over here. And I do appreciate what our representatives do to help advocate for us, but it's there's still a lot of work that needs to be done.
Well, and we talked talked about it on a call with some superintendents the other day. Is like the messaging is important as well, because a lot of times we say we need more money for K-12, and I think inherently, like when you hear that, you assume that we have enough and that we are asking for more, and instead it's like we need to start talking about how we need adequate funding. Like it's inadequate what we're actually getting from the state. So when we say we want more, it makes it sound like we're greedy and we're needing more than what we actually need. It would be great to be like adequately funded from the state. And again, they commission their own report on that, so we're not making the numbers up. And if it's $3.5 billion shortfall every year, somebody's got to do something to start moving the needle on that. So it's not wanting more; it's can we be adequately funded to support our students.
Yeah, like you said, our nutritional costs, our contract costs, our utility costs,
Transportation.
transportation, insurance, also wanting to continue to pay staff, and and everybody across the board, all of our people, right? Custodians, paras, we have to pay everybody because we need to recruit and retain everybody in the system. So it takes all of it. So yeah, we're definitely not adequately funded as far as that goes at 1989 levels. So thanks for that clarification. Any other questions or comments for Mel?
No, I just want to say thank you and good job to Mel and her team for always, in a time of uncertainty, always coming out and keeping us informed and being transparent about things and finding the silver lining when there's really not one. So, and you guys have done a great job. And so I was saying thank you and good job.
Thank you. I appreciate that. We're going to be real, but we're still going to hope for the best.
I absolutely second what Director Jones said and everybody else. And I just think where we felt we were last year, and we felt, I don't know, kind of comfortable. And then, there was this, well, this is what the equation's going to be, and this is how this is going to pan out, and it's going to be favorable for you guys. And it really does disgust me, and it should disgust our community, and you guys should really be out there advocating at the state level, like Dr. Hill said, because they backtracked and they took what they said they were going to give us, and now we're in such a bad spot. And 14 years, the budget stabilization factor stopped for a hot minute, but it doesn't mean it couldn't come back. It doesn't mean that they can't change it in legislation. It doesn't mean...
Well, they never removed it. They just paused it.
They paused it, right.
It's still in there.
But we're still 14 years unfunded, or underfunded, I guess I should say. And then we don't know where we're going to sit next year. And I really say, you guys are amazing, but plan for the worst and hope for the best, I guess.
Again, trying to find some silver lining. I'd much rather be talking about this in October than in May, when we've had to talk about some other funding reductions in the past, when they really do come down at the end. And so I think when we have this information, we have to take it seriously. We have to start planning. We have to start making thoughtful, careful decisions, because in the past we haven't had the luxury of being able to do that. And so I'm much more thankful for at least a runway where we're starting these conversations and starting the planning, because of course we don't want to impact students. We want to impact our staff as least as possible. If we're talking positions, that's a much better place to be than talking people. And so all of those things and all of the planning that goes into it, that's top of mind, I guess.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. And then, so thank you, Mel. And our last item, I'm going to have Tammy come up, and it's for the Wingate Memorial. So she'll share that. And then I know this is in your packet to vote on tonight.
And I'm having Callie join me up here and Amy Schrader. Come on up. As you know, we wrote KDEA back in October, which was the naming of facilities and memorials and tributes within the school buildings. We wanted to kind of get a hold of making sure that everything was appropriately run by people. We knew what was going on in the buildings, things were consistent, why we were putting names to certain things within certain buildings. So we established a process, and part of that process under KDEA, and I'm going to start to my left here with Callie, is forming a naming committee. And so, as you know, myself, I'm on the naming committee. Callie is for communication purposes, because often she's either out there or she calls me to let me know that something's going on that I don't even know about. And Paul Kane is part of that naming committee as well. A lot of our names come through athletics or have to do with gyms or fields or things like that, so he kind of has a pulse. Clint is on the committee since he's in most of all of our buildings. I thought he was a good touch for that. Probably, I'm going to say the most important person is our environmental health and safety manager, Melissa Salter, and that is because she's a genius with these forms. And she helped me with the service animals, so I let her know that hard work does not go unnoticed, and you've just been appointed to a committee. So she then helped, so thank you, Melissa. So she helped create all of the forms. We have put it on the website. There is now in the intranet, it's now called Board of Education Policies, and it also falls into departments so that all principals know that these forms now exist. I did roll out a bunch of new policies to the principals, this being one of them. And so Amy followed and was the first to submit paperwork. I'm not going to present every time that we have a memorial or of naming of a facility, but since this really is the first time we've gone through the process, I thought, well, we'll come up here and just inform you. So this is at Wingate Elementary, and the little guy's name is Becker Minnick. Sorry, I knew that. And so I sent you the paperwork earlier. This is for a piece of playground equipment, and maybe I'll just let Amy talk a little bit about Becker to tell the board. Just a little something about him.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. Is this on? We're good? I didn't think so. Okay. Okay, close. So thank you so much for considering this. So Becker was a student at Wingate from kindergarten through 5th grade, and then he moved on to Redlands Middle School. He did have some health-related issues and passed away this summer. Okay. So he had some health-related issues and passed away this summer. During his illness, he was in a wheelchair, and we would often see him after hours coming over to our playground and enjoying our new adaptive equipment, playing with his brothers and his mom. I had a few opportunities to go and say hello and talk to them. So when he passed away this summer, his parents reached out to me and asked that if people who knew the family could donate to, they made donations to Redlands Middle School or to our playground project in honor of him. And so the donations started pouring in and actually were more than I had expected. And so with that, I decided that I wanted to see if we could purchase one single piece of equipment that we could celebrate and honor him. I didn't really want to wrap it up into the larger project because we had so many additional donors for that equipment. So we were able to order a piece of equipment. It will be here and installed in December. And we're hoping to affix a memorial plaque to it to recognize and celebrate him, celebrate inclusion, and just the joy that he brought to our school community and to really the whole Redlands community.
So the paperwork has gone through all of the naming committee who have signed off. Final went to Dr. Hill, who also approved. The plaque, at least initially, the thoughts are that the plaque on the piece of equipment that I also sent you a picture of will say, Sorry. I didn't think it would hit this close to home for me. In celebration of Becker, whose joy and courage inspire play for all. Always loved, never forgotten, forever missed. So that plaque will be affixed to the piece of equipment, maybe with his picture. So I am going to ask for you to vote tonight to approve this particular memorial. And if so, then I will have Andrea sign off on that, and we can move forward.
Thank you.
Any questions?
With that, do I have a motion to approve the naming for this piece of equipment?
Motion to approve the naming.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, seeing none. Well, sorry, we gotta wait for Amy. Yes, we're gonna. No, we're gonna go ahead and just go ahead and vote for. Take care of this right now. So.
Mr. Chavez.
Approved.
Mrs. Evanson.
Yes.
Mrs. Heights.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
Well, thank you. This was a very special one to be able to do, first of all, and thanks for the work on the policy. And please let us know when you guys dedicate it. We'd love to be out there and be able to participate. So it's awesome.
Yes, thank you for your support. We will invite you to the memorial service that we have. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're going to take just a quick 5-minute little reprieve, and then we'll be right back.
Hey, you too.
All right. Thank you, everyone, so we could take that little bit of a break. Next up, we have audience comments. So Director Jones is going to kick us off on that, and we have 3 minutes for audience comments. I think we only have one.
All right,
So-
we've got a real busy night tonight, so we're gonna be here for a little bit. So, Ms. Hicks, you're up first and last.
So I think I'm mostly here to put a face on the educational impact of these budget decisions. So I teach at a high needs school, and I have 25 second graders this year. But when you talk about 25 second graders, I know that we hear across the board that people have more than that, and at other districts they have more than that, and I'm here to say that's not acceptable anywhere. But in my class, I have 15 read plans. I have 10 kids who can't access grade level curriculum. It's not possible. They're that far below. So I have to adapt that. A good small group size is 6. So I can't even intervene at that level. In addition, I do have the rest of them who also I have to meet with and I have to do things for. And so this year we received and math also, I had 40% of kids come in what we call the red, which is 2 grades below grade level. So just try to organize my thinking here. Our school received 100 kids and we only received 4 FTEs. One of those had to go for specials because we added another round and that just had to happen. It's simply made it so that our class sizes were going to be too big. We lost 2 interventionists to the classroom. So now we don't have interventions either. I'm teaching a large size intervention group now of 16. We flooded our aides into those classrooms, but it's simply not working. My progress monitoring doesn't look like it usually does. I grow kids. I work hard and I grow kids, and I don't have the resources to do that with the current classroom size that I have. So I am really here to put a face on, we have to make, when you're talking about the budget, you have to make extremely, extremely difficult decisions about the budget. When we're talking about class size, it matters. It matters right now to these kids. Second grade's a big year for reading, and my kids, I really cannot say that they're going to grow the way that I want them to this year. Behaviors also are very impacted, and so I just want you to know that I've reached out to you guys, I've emailed you guys, I've gone to board coffees, and this was making decisions last year, and I really, really do want to hear, what are we doing? What really, really hard decisions are we making to help the impact in that classroom? Because it is very impactful, especially in a school like mine. And I do want to say, my principal can't solve this problem. I've gone to him, but there is no more he can do. We don't have the resources at my school. We've done what we can.
Thank you. That concludes our audience comments for the night.
All right, thank you. Next up, we have our consent agenda. The consent agenda contains personnel actions and acceptance of gifts, items that are routine and can be approved by a single motion. Items on the consent agenda will not be discussed individually by the board unless a board member wants an item removed for individual consideration. Board, is anyone requesting any items to be removed from the consent agenda this evening? Okay, seeing none. I will state that we had a total of $56,968.07 in gifts. So we're thankful to our community that gives to individual schools in lots of various ways. So we're thankful for that. And that's all listed in the agenda so everybody can see who's giving what. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Mr. Chavez.
Approved.
Mrs. Evanson.
Yes.
Mrs. Heights.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
All right, next up, we have We have two policies. We have policy IKF, for graduation requirements, and policy JH for the student absences and excuses. Excuses. So do we have a motion to approve policy IKF and JH?
Motion to approve policy IKF, policy JH.
Second.
Any discussion on these?
Mr. Chavez.
Approved.
Mrs. Evanson.
Yes.
Mrs. Heights.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
And we already did the Wingate Memorial, just felt like it was more appropriate to do right at the time there. Next up, we have a resolution to approve the sale of the property, which we have the resolution for the Elm property. So do I have a motion to approve the resolution to approve the sale of that property?
Motion to approve the resolution to approve the sale of the property.
Second.
Any discussion?
Mr. Chavez.
Approved.
Mrs. Evanson.
Yes.
Mrs. Heights.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Ms. Lima.
Yes.
All right. Next up, board open discussion. Is there anything the board is looking to get on the agenda or have anything else they want to bring up?
Something I forgot earlier. We did have the board coffee.
Oh, yeah.
We had a gentleman come down and talk to us for a while. Actually, a couple of people come talk to us for a while, and so it was a good conversation and good hour and a half or so. And so I just want to thank the individuals that came for the coffee and implore our community to come out to coffees when we get a chance. It's a good chance to have one-on-one conversation with the board, so and find out things that you wouldn't really want to hear in a meeting or might want to know more.
Yeah. Great.
That's it.
All right. Our next meetings. Well, in November, normally it would be the 4th, but that is the election, so we bump that meeting. So the next meeting will be November 18th. And then could possibly have an additional meeting, but then November, December, there will be an organizational meeting based on new board members or new board member positions. So stay tuned for that. And that is all we have. So do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening. Drive safe.